our fourth round. This is the last round where, with the three candidates, with the three panelists rather, on here. Our fourth round rules: we got a great take gives you 1,600 points, a good take 800, okay take 400, and a bad take 0. To the second Monday Night Football game, it actually happened to be a Super Bowl rematch between the LA Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow was a game time decision, was able to suit up. Played okay. Listen, didn't make a whole lot of mistakes. Threw an interception, albeit it was a great play by the DB. But listen, Cincinnati ran the ball well. Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase had double-digit catches. Joe Burrow was not exactly, again, put in a position where he was, compromised too much physically. But I'll start with you this time, Barry. Do you think the Bengals are making a mistake in putting Joe Burrow out there and potentially risking more serious injury?
Well, I mean, the thing is, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? They have a very good team offensively to be able to compete with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Chargers and the Dolphins. They are one of the most dynamic offensive teams out there. They have one of the best quarterbacks in football that can be able to have them stay in games and come back, and all the comeback victories that he's had, whether it be a bad offensive line, a good offensive line, Joe Burrow is solid, right? So they have to make a decision. Well, we don't want to kind of punt this season because they have a lot of question marks going forward, on their offensive line, in their defense, that they might not be able to keep it together, right? So try to win as much as you can now. You have to trust your quarterback. You have to trust how he's feeling. And if Joe Burrow is 70%, I would take a 70% Joe Burrow than 100% Kirk Cousins or 100% Mac Jones, right? So those things, I think you have to, at this point of Joe Burrow's career, the Bengals trust him. They trust him to be able to communicate in regards to how he's feeling, how he can be able to go out there. Listen, his numbers weren't great yesterday, 26 for 49, 259 yards, but he kept them in the game with some really, really good throws. And that's something that you can't really rely on somebody else that's on the practice squad or the backup quarterback that's never thrown an NFL pass. So those are things that they have to worry about. And yeah, I think they have to go this path, and they might be taking a risk, but it's a risk that they have to take.
Yeah, and again, they started 0-2, and this was kind of, I felt like, a must-win for them, that if they lose to the LA Rams, again, like we talked about Philadelphia's schedule, Cincinnati's schedule is no slouch as well, given the division they play in, given that it's a first-place schedule in the AFC, and they also got the Niners on their schedule out of the NFC, so they had to win this game. Joe Burrow played well enough to win. By the way, the defense played excellent against Stafford and the Rams offense. Right. But to you, Mike Guido, now, do you think the Bengals are making a mistake in terms of putting Joe Burrow out there and running the risk that they could lose him for the season?
Well, I mean, I think the question is a little tough because it depends on how hurt Joe Burrow really is. I mean, if they're running him out there and he really shouldn't be playing, because I don't know that any of us really know what the doctors are telling him or whatever, or telling the team or whatever that whatever the case really may be. But if he can go out there, he should absolutely play. I mean, this is you kind of brought it up, Bryson, and this was kind of the point that I was going to make, is that the Bengals really can't rely on Jake Browning in this division. I mean, we're looking at a division right now where the Ravens look like they're a real team. The Cleveland Browns look like they're a real team with a very good defense. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, your Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't think are a slouch either. Regardless of what you think of Kenny Pickett, that's a very real Pittsburgh Steeler defense as well. I think I agree with what Barry said 100%. If you can get 70 to 75% of Joe Burrow, that's what gives you the biggest chance to win. Again, we all know what the state of NFL rosters are. Once you have to start paying guys, other guys you can't afford got to go. So as long as you have this roster, you have to find ways to win football games. Now, the struggle is that Cincinnati's offensive line is not great. Joe Burrow's faced a lot of pressure in his career, and that's the scary part. But I think right now, if Joe Burrow feels like he can play, you absolutely have to play him. This is a tough division. This is a tough AFC. You want to be able to compete in this league. And you're right, the Bengals' schedule is not easy. You're playing the 49ers. You're playing Buffalo. You're playing Kansas City. You're playing a lot of real teams going on later in the season. So, no, I don't think that they're making a mistake. I think Joe Burrow is right now, depending on how hurt he is, if he's able to go out, I mean, it doesn't look like he's limping, right? Like he's not really, really struggling to move too much. It just might be a little bit of a leverage on his throws kind of thing. If he can go out there, he's your best chance to win, regardless of how he's looked through the first 3 weeks.
Oh, no question he's the best chance to win. And you hit on something that I was going to bring up, that the Bengals offensive line, which, and again, it's so frustrating to watch because it looks like every offseason they're putting money, they're investing. They got Orlando Brown this offseason. And then once again, Joe Burrow's running for his life. Joe Burrow's getting injured. So it's a tough spot, in terms of him being able to stay healthy. So, and like you mentioned, that division has a lot of great defensive lines, especially in Cleveland and in Pittsburgh. So that's going to be something for the Bengals to monitor moving forward. To John Rivera now. Again, the Bengals started 0-2 last year. They beat your Jets. Sorry to bring the Jets into this again. And then got on a roll, ended up getting to the AFC Championship game. But do you think the Bengals are running a major risk, or making a mistake in running a major risk in playing Joe Burrow with the calf injury?
Hey, the Warriors wasn't making no risk when they put KD out there, right?
Thanks,
Championship,
John.
No, what I'm just saying with that is, like, you want your star players out there. If he's good enough to go out there, and the doctors think he's good enough to go out there, he's gonna go out there. Thought he was good enough for KD. Just like for KD, they thought he was good enough. Kurt Schilling, the Dodger Red Sox reference, he was out there pitching with a bloody sock, right? If your guy can play, man, you got to go play him, man. You know what I mean? And it's just like all these guys said, 60, 70% Joe Burrow is better than 60, 70% of the league. You know what I mean? Being injured or whatever. And like I said, the NFL windows close real fast, man. So definitely a strong division. Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Baltimore. And it's still up for grabs. Even though it's strong, it's still up for grabs. And Cincinnati got enough talent that, as long as Joe can get the ball to chase here and there, and, the offensive line can hold up a little bit with Mixon, they'll be all right. But they definitely not running a risk for him, I don't think. Like I said, if he wasn't, the doctors and himself think he wasn't good enough to go out there, then he wouldn't be out there. So I don't think they're running a risk at all.
That's interesting. I will say, though, about the Kevin Durant thing, I mean, how did that end for my Warriors? That's obviously a rhetorical question. It probably potentially cost us a championship in 2019 and cost KD a year and a half of basketball. So hopefully, knock on wood that doesn't happen to Joe Burrow, of course.
Right.
And so listen, like you said, though, 70% of Joe Burrow is better than just about all of the NFL. And listen, again, it's a tough schedule for Cincinnati, but if Joe's ready to go, then you obviously got to play him. Complete Sports Media in the comments says the Bengals had almost no choice but to play Joe Cool, as Jake Browning was the backup option. They were 0-2 on the year. They lose that game last night. The potential of making the playoffs is over. Yeah, the potential for 0-2 teams making the playoffs, we've seen the stat over and over every year, is pretty small. 0-3 teams is darn near impossible. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's like single-digit teams, the history of the league, that have started 0-3 and gotten to the playoffs. So, and the Bengals with Joe Burrow could potentially do that, but again, with a healthy Joe Burrow, you certainly like that chance better. Gonna start, let's see, Barry went first. We'll start with Barry. Great take by Barry. Listen, I know you're a Joe Burrow guy. You have been since the beginning, and listen, it's kind of a situation. The NFL is different than most leagues in that there's only 17 games. There's a sense of urgency, and so every game matters so much more than it does, say, in baseball or in basketball or hockey. So if you have an opportunity again against a Rams team that doesn't look terribly great, certainly not like a playoff team, you got to take advantage of that and see if you can get something going offensively, because that's something else too. The rhythm of the Bengals offense has been off for the last couple of weeks and didn't even look all that great yesterday, but if you can try and build some momentum, that'll obviously be key. Mike Guido now, again, and staying in first place, another great take, 3,000 points for Frozone. Listen, it's again, like I said, NFL's a tough league. Or the AFC North, rather, is a tough division, and so you're going to need every win you can get, and so to have Joe Burrow out there obviously gives the best chance to do that. Hold on, let me get John's point total up here real quick. Because hold on, there we go. Okay, John, good take. The only reason I docked you some points is because you said there's no risk at all. This is a calf injury we're talking about. Again, as you mentioned, we saw what happened with Kevin Durant. We saw what happens with athletes in the past that play with beat up calves. But again, like you said, it's if he's ready to go, you obviously got to play him. So that means we're gonna have a match between the two founders of the Grid Network. But for John, I apologize, my man. It's not going to work out for you today, buddy. But thank you for coming on. How'd you feel about your performance?
It was all right. I know it's a little home cooking, you know what I mean? But it's all right. It's all right.
Listen, man, he didn't give you no jet questions, John. No jet questions, right?
I wasn't going to do that to you, my man.
Listen, I would have not answered. So what have been the answer?
You'd have protested.
I think that would have been the best take, right?
Oh man, that's awesome, John. Appreciate you coming on short notice, and hopefully we can have you on the show once again in the future.
Yeah, no problem. You guys have a good one.
My guy,
yes, sir.
man.
You too. John Rivera, always great stuff on the Fan Perspective podcast. And what do you know? The co-founders or the founders of the Grid Network square off for the very first time the 8 o'clock
The
spot.
wrench
Shocking that it took
came for
8
work,
episodes.
okay?
And it took eight episodes to get to this point. And this is going to be a fun one. Real